Astronautical UFO encounters. From the Roswell Incident, the classic study of UFO contact by Charles Berlitz and William L. Moore. We cannot predicate a mass delusion, especially in a world where many heads of state among the developed nations, as well as the highest officials of the United Nations, leading scientists, astronomers, and by now the majority of the Earth's population are convinced that we are regularly being visited by UFOs. They appear over large cities, seen by hundreds of thousands. They land near TV stations and power plants, and are suspected of having caused the Great Power Blackout of 1965. They buzz passenger planes and are reported to have destroyed military ones as well. They regularly haunt our advanced research and space shot centers and follow our capsules into the cosmos. So convinced are large numbers of people about the hovering presence of UFOs that an airfield in France is permanently reserved for their landing. Its blue landing lights an invitation only to landing craft not of this Earth. With the breaking of the space barrier, it appears that astronauts from Earth have begun to meet UFOs out in space. If we consider reports that the majority of space ventures have encountered UFOs, then the percentage of encounters is vastly greater in space than in the skies of Earth. This would seem definitely to indicate that UFOs are of extraterrestrial origin and, far from being supernatural, are possibly space probes, patrols, or other activity frequently pointed in the direction of Earth, an activity antedating our own space efforts over a period of thousands or even millions of years. While much has been written about UFO sightings and encounters on Earth, little has been openly written about encounters with UFOs in space exploration. A rather convincing indication of the presence of UFOs in Earth space, but how far out do our space boundaries extend? This has been furnished by mathematician, physicist, and author Maurice Chaitlin, a designer for the Apollo spacecraft and former chief of the NASA communications for the Apollo lunar missions, and an outspoken documentalist of one special phase of close encounters in space by explorers from Earth with entities from elsewhere. According to Chaitlin's accounts, some of which are based on information picked up from inside sources while working for NASA in the 1960s, and other relying on data passed on to him later by friends and former colleagues, reports of these encounters made during flights in space have generally been censored, altered, de-emphasized, or simply ignored by NASA, and therefore never reached the public at the time of their occurrence. The fact that the astronauts were on military duty was, according to Chaitlin, a great and perhaps planned advantage for secrecy, inasmuch as they could simply be ordered not to discuss aspects of their UFO encounters. Although the majority of U.S. astronauts are no longer on active duty, they have steadfastly maintained a discreet silence on this topic right up to the present day, leaving us with only Chaitlin's inside accounts to hint at what might really have gone on in space and even over the surface of the moon. These, to say the least, are visibly impressive. The following table is detailed in chronological order. Spacecraft and date. Mercury, May 16, 1963. Crew, Cooper. Incident regarding UFO or unidentified space object. Over Hawaii, the Mercury picked up voices on special frequency speaking in language later examined on tape and found to belong to no known Earth language. Passing over Perth, Australia, saw a large UFO also observed by checking station on Earth. Spacecraft and date, Gemini 4, June 3, 1964. Crew, McDivitt and White. Over Hawaii, almost collided with silver cylinder, oval with luminous trail. Photographed it. Gemini 7, December 4th, 1965. Borman and Level. Took pictures of an enormous UFO with propulsion systems following capsule. Gemini 9, June 3rd, 1966. Stafford and Cernan. Capsule accompanied from takeoff by many UFOs seen by ground personnel as well as by capsule crew. Gemini 10, July 18, 1966. Young and Collins. 2 UFOs followed and disappeared when capsule asked ground station for radar observation. Later, a huge object, not a planet or planetoid, was observed. Gemini 11, September 12, 1966. Gordon and Conrad. Long object sighted over Madagascar. NASA said it was Soviet Proton 3, but latter was 350 miles away at time of sighting. Apollo 8, December 21st, 1968. Borman, Level, and Anders cited disc-shaped UFOs as capsules circled moon. Reported, we have just been informed that Santa Claus does exist. Also picked up unidentifiable language on space frequency radio. Apollo 10th, May 18th to 26th, 1969. Stafford, Young, and Cernan cited 2 UFOs following capsule during orbit of moon and homeward flight. Apollo 12th, November 14th, 1969. Conrad, Gordon, and Bean. Observatories on Earth observed capsule being accompanied by 2 brilliant UFOs near moon. Then, when near Earth before landing, a large UFO with red lights was observed. Apollo 17th, December 7th to December 19th, 1972. Cernan, Evans, and Schmidt saw UFOs near Earth, close to moon, and in between. Although several of the astronauts have flatly denied experiencing UFO sightings in space, and NASA is reported to have dismissed one of its employees for allegedly selling falsified tape recordings of conversations similar to the one above, Chaitlin maintains that his information is of the most reliable sort and has published this information in his books in France, England, and the USA. In his words, all Apollo or Gemini flights were followed, both at a distance and sometimes quite closely, by space vehicles of extraterrestrial origin. Every time it occurred, the astronauts informed Mission Control, who then ordered absolute silence. And of course, these sightings do not include Russian sightings and alleged observations by both Russian and American astronauts of ruins, constructions, and pyramids on the moon, which may or may not have bearings on present UFO activity. It indicates, however, a lively curiosity in our own space activities on the part of entities unknown. Besides these meetings in the cosmos, there are sightings close and distant by thousands of chance observers on Earth as they watch the skies by night or by day. They are persistent, though difficult to verify, reports of cosmic kidnappings wherein startled human beings have been taken aboard UFOs, kept there, questioned, brainwashed, and then released, generally with memory and especially time lapses, because of which what seemed a few minutes to them has been several days in Earth time. For decades, the USA and the USSR have suspected each other of being the source of the persistent UFOs. A large segment of public opinion in both superpowers is now more or less convinced that our mysterious visitors really exist and that they come from somewhere else in space or perhaps in time. Now, as both powers are beginning to explore our nearest neighbor in the cosmos, the moon, it would seem advisable that the two powers and others who eventually join the exploration of the moon share information attained, especially regarding the possibility of present or past life on the moon. There are persistent rumors that U.S. astronauts and Soviet cosmonauts have observed and photographed what appear to be constructions on the surface of the moon. These include walls, domes, bridge-like formations, spires, and spire-like pyramids estimated to be 150 feet high within the Sea of Storms, where Conrad and Gordon also observed something resembling a rectilinear wall. On the dark side of the moon, the Soviet Luna 9 reported geometric arrangements of huge stones which, according to Professor Ivanov, a Soviet space scientist, could be flight markers for a lunar runway. Within the Sea of Tranquility, a number of sharp shadows seem to be caused by precipitous towering structures. One shadow described as indicating a tower-like formation as high as the Washington Monument. Still another, resembling a gigantic antenna at the edge of the Janssen crater, is described as being of improbable height, with the added suggestion that it might be a gigantic electric pylon. Such rumors or reports have been, of course, regularly denied or, when already photographed, downgraded as perfectly natural formations. Astronomers and photo interpreters, understandably careful of their reputations, have explained the pyramids as shadows, the bridges and walls as curving ridges, the arrangement of stones as chance scattering of boulders, and the domes as the bubbling up of the moon's surface because of volcanic activity. But if this were truly the case, the surface of the domes themselves would not be the same color as the surrounding moonscape, and not as they are a translucent white. Further unexplained phenomena noted on the moon imply motion. One photograph, reportedly taken from the Apollo 11 mission, published in the USA, the United Kingdom, and other countries, shows two glowing unidentified disks moving up from a moon crater. Sustained bursts of lights and intermittent moon spots glowing in changing colors have long been observed on different parts of the moon by a large selection of astronomers observing from different parts of the Earth and at different times. These have been especially noted as the coming from the Cobra's Head in Schroeder Valley and in the Aristarchus and Maskelyne craters. The observed phenomenon of a curious silicon-like mist occasionally seen rising from the surface of the moon has been ascribed by one observer, considering the absence of water vapor, to the possibility that moon movers were digging in one of the craters. These last-mentioned phenomena, if further verified, would doubtlessly be ascribed to the still slightly active interior of the moon. From Natural or Supernatural, a casebook of true unexplained mysteries by Martin S. Caden. How high is heaven? According to Caden, I am grateful to a French news correspondent who, at his insistence, must remain unnamed in these pages as he explains to protect his sources and keep open his lines of communication. He explained further that were it not for what he judges as the absolute reliability of his source from within the former Soviet Union, he would never have passed on the information that follows, because then he would be considered as crazy as his source. In June 1985, those in the control center for the Soviet space station Salyut 7 were stunned by the voices of the cosmonauts reporting a sight so bizarre that they began to doubt their own senses. High overhead, orbiting Earth, the cosmonauts of Salyut 7 were in the 155th day of their mission. The three cosmonauts were at their duty stations when suddenly a dazzling orange light enveloped the Salyut. Commander Atkov and cosmonauts Soloviev and Kizim reported that the light was so blinding that at first they thought there had been an explosion or a fire in some part of the station. With strained voices, they added that all three men for several minutes seemed to have been struck blind. When their vision returned, they looked through the portholes of the Salyut and were struck dumb. We are seeing faces, they told their ground control. They were ordered to repeat slowly what they had said. Atkov slowly and deliberately explained what they could see. Outside the ship, we are able to see 7 faces. There are 7 of them. They are huge human bodies with wings. They look what we call on Earth as angels. The 7 faces kept pace with the Salyut 7, orbiting the Earth at nearly 5 miles a second for a period of 10 minutes, and then, abruptly, they vanished. In the excited exchange between ground control and Salyut 7, the cosmonauts added that perhaps they had all gone crazy at the same time. After several more days passed, they were more convinced than ever that they had all suffered some kind of inexplicable group hallucination. 12 days later, on the 167th mission day, the 3 men were joined by 3 additional cosmonauts who reached the station aboard the Soyuz T-12 spacecraft Volk, Dazhenbovek, and Savitskaya. Now there are 5 men and 1 woman aboard the station. The station was again enveloped in the dazzling orange light, and now 6 cosmonauts found themselves temporarily blinded by the glare. Once again, ground control was as stunned as the cosmonauts in space, who radioed, "We can see the faces of 7 angels smiling at us. They're smiling like they share a glorious secret with us. Each angel is huge, like the first ones. They are as big as an airliner. They stayed with us a couple of minutes, and then now they are gone. We cannot see them anymore." These exchanges between Salyut 7 and ground control were kept under the strictest secrecy. The extraordinary event was never known outside until a top engineer from the Soviet manned space program left his homeland and came to the United States. Any and all discussion on the subject seemed to have been forbidden. All questions referring to the incident went without response. The French correspondent found it incredible that nobody even seems to try to obtain more information on this remarkable, even incredible event. And I wish to emphasize as strongly as I can that it is not myself who is telling you what happened. It is the Soviet military crew who said that they saw the angels. More UAOs seen by astronauts, unidentified aerial objects. On February 20th, 1962, John Glenn in Mercury saw 3 objects. They followed him and then overtook his spaceship. On May 24th, 1962, Mercury 7, Scott Carpenter. He took photographs of firefly-type objects, and he also was quoted as saying, "I've got a good photo of a saucer." May 30th, 1962. Joe Walton, an X-15 pilot, spots 5 discs and takes a photograph of them. July 17th, 1962, Bob White, another X-15 pilot. He says that he came within 30 feet when he was 58 miles high of objects. He takes photographs. May 16th, 1963, Gordon Cooper aboard Mercury 9 during his 15th orbit of Earth saw mysterious objects. They were, quote, green with a red tail. He had sightings over South America and Australia, and in fact in Perth they tracked the objects by radar. October 3rd, 1963, Wally Schirra aboard Mercury 8. He saw large glowing masses when he was orbiting over the Indian Ocean. March 8th, 1964, aboard Voskhod 2, a Soviet craft, 2 Soviet cosmonauts, they saw a UFO just as they re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. June 3rd, 1964, Jim McDivitt aboard Gemini 4. He took a photograph of several strange objects. He saw egg-shaped UFOs with exhaust coming out of the rear of the vehicle. They were cylindrical with arms sticking out of them. October 12, 1964. 3 Soviet cosmonauts aboard Voskhod 1 were surrounded by a formation of swift disks. December 12, 1965. Frank Borman and Jim Lovell aboard Gemini 8. They took a photograph of twin oval-shaped UFOs with sloping undersides. There was also a prominent glow about them. July 18th, 1966, Gemini 10, the astronauts John Young and Michael Collins. They saw a large cylindrical object with 2 smaller bright objects, which John Young photographed. NASA had no returns on radar. September 12, 1966, Dick Gordon and Charles Conrad aboard Gemini 11. They saw a yellow-orange UFO 6 miles away. It dropped down in front of them but disappeared when they tried to photograph it. November 11, 1966, Buzz Aldrin and Jim Lovell aboard Gemini 12. They saw 4 UFOs linked in a row. Quote Jim Lovell, they weren't stars. December 21st, 1968. Frank Borman and Jim Lovell aboard Apollo 8 3 times. They were 10 miles up and they see a UFO or a bogey. July 16th, 1969. Apollo 11. The astronauts Collins, Aldrin, and Armstrong. A UFO chases Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Mike Collins as they are orbiting the moon. November 14th, 1969. Pete Conrad, Alan Bean, and Dick Gordon aboard Apollo 12. They were 132,000 miles from the moon. And, quote, a UFO accompanied us and it preceded us all of the way. And now here are Dr. Carl Sagan's UFO explanations. And I'll do it in notebook form. A. Material objects. Number 1. Upper atmosphere. Meteors. Satellite re-entry. Rocket launch. Ionosphere experiments. Firings. Skyhook balloons. Number 2. Lower atmosphere. Planes. Reflection of sun. Running lights. Landing lights. Weather balloons. Luminous. Non-luminous. Clusters. Clouds. Contrails. Blimps. Advertising and illuminated. Bubbles. From sewage disposal or soap bubbles. Military test craft. Military experiments. Magnesium flares. Birds migrating in flocks or individual. And luminous. Number 3, very low atmosphere. Paper and other debris. Kites, leaves, spider webs. insects, swarms, moths. Luminous, electrical discharges. Seeds of milkweed, feathers, parachutes, fireworks. Number 4, on or near ground. Dust devils, transformers, insulators, power lines, elevated streetlights, reflections from windows, water tanks, lightning rods, TV antennas, weather vanes, automobile headlights, lakes and ponds, beacon lights, lighthouses, tumbleweeds, icebergs, domed roofs, radar antennas, radio astronomy, insect swarms, fires, oil refineries, cigarettes tossed away. B. Immaterial objects. Number 1, upper atmosphere, auroral phenomena, noctilucent clouds, zodiacal lights. 2, lower atmosphere, reflections of searchlights, lightning, whether it's in streak, chain, sheet, plasma phenomena, or ball lightning. St. Elmo's fire, parhelia, or sundogs, parceline, or moondogs, reflections from fog and mist, like halos, pilot's halos, or ghost of the Brocken, superior or inferior mirages. C. Astronomical, planets, stars, artificial satellites, the sun, the moon, meteors, comets. D. Physiological, after images such as the sun, the moon, electric lights, reflections from bright sources such as electric lights and street lights, flashlights, matches, a smoker lighting a pipe, autokinesis, stars unsteady, stars changing places, falling of effect, autostasis or irregular movement, eye defects, astigmatisms, myopia, squinting, failure to wear glasses, reflections from glasses, antoptic phenomena such as retinal defects and vitreous humor. E. Psychological hallucination. F. Combinations and special effects. G. Photographic records such as developmental defects or internal camera reflections. H. Radar. Anomalous refraction, scattering, ghost images, angels, birds, insects, multiple reflection. And I. Hoaxes. And now a few words on Men in Black. From Damon, Texas comes this story. 2 deputy sheriffs, one with an alligator bite wound, were all of a sudden enveloped in a light that came down from the heavens. It chased them back to town. The wound miraculously healed. But a man came over to one of the sheriffs and said, "Don't you say anything about it." Here are 6 telltale signs for Men in Black, or MIBs. Number 1, they usually accompany any sort of landing or photograph. Number 2, they appear and flash Air Force or NORAD credentials. Number 3, they attempt to confiscate evidence. Number 4, and here's the important one, they have knowledge of sighting before witness makes out report. Number 5, they're usually wearing dark suits or business suits, usually of the same make. And number 6, they usually drive a black official-looking car, usually though a late-year model. From the UFO Encyclopedia, compiled and edited by John Spencer. Gemini space missions. There have been suggestions that several of the American 2-man Gemini space missions of the 1960s encountered UFOs in flight. In particular, this claim has been made of Gemini 4 and Gemini 7. However, it must be stressed that the astronauts involved, while admitting that they have reported UFOs in the strict sense of the word, i.e. something apparently flying and identified, have never claimed that they believe them to be of exotic or anomalous origin. Voskhod space missions. As with the American space program, rumors have persisted of UFO interference with Russian space shots, including Voskhod 1 and 2 in the mid-1960s. With regard to Voskhod 1, the rumor is that the spacecraft was constantly buzzed by fast-moving saucers, the magnetic backwash of which disturbed instrumentation in the craft. In the case of Voskhod 2, it is believed that it came down in an emergency with the astronauts barely surviving after having lost ground control contact. There is no official verification of these stories, though having taken place at a time when censorship in the Soviet Union was extreme, that is perhaps not so surprising. Men in Black. The Men in Black were a curious phenomenon of the early years of UFO stories in North America. Typically, they went around in twos and threes, were well-dressed, always in dark suits, and looked not unlike FBI agents. There is a suggestion that they were in fact government agents suppressing UFO stories, and one of the more specific claims was that they were agents of the Atomic Energy Commission who were suppressing stories of an accidental leakage of radioactive material at Maury Island. Of more interest is the theory that the Men in Black were themselves alien in suppressing witnesses' stories in order to carry on conducting their own clandestine activities. There are claims that they wore bizarre makeup, with the men often wearing lipstick as if somehow not quite appreciating the difference between the sexes on Earth. Typically, they would drive old cars that were in pristine condition, somehow suggesting that they'd been created for a specific purpose. Although they have not completely gone away, the Men in Black are now much more rarely reported, possibly coinciding with an era of much greater openness worldwide about the subject of UFOs. In November 1957, there seemed to be a lot of attention around Route 116 near Levelland, Texas. There were at least half a dozen independent reports of a large object sighted on November 2nd in that area, including several of a landing. Ronald Martin was one witness to the landing, describing the object as extremely large, bright brown and red, and sitting on the road blocking his route. The electrical system of his truck cut out, the object turned bluish-green and took to the sky, reverting to red as it disappeared from sight. Many similar reports were received within an hour or so of Martin's sighting, including several reports of vehicle interference as well as corroborated descriptions suggesting very strongly that a genuine physical presence was in the sky that night. For several hours, police were combing the highways outside trying to discover precisely what the presence was, as there was considerable alarm amongst the neighborhood communities, but no conclusion was ever drawn, despite the fact that two of those police officers, Sheriff Clem and Deputy McCullough, also witnessed the object. On November 17, 1882, E.W. Maunder was at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England, watching an auroral display 2 hours after sunset when he saw a great circular disk of greenish light appear in the sky. It took approximately 2 minutes to cross his field of vision. It was moving smoothly but very quickly compared to any astronomical bodies he was observing. As it passed just above the moon, it seemed to elongate, suggesting that it was a disk changing its angle relative to the Maunder's position. There were many other observers of the object, spoken of as a cigar-shaped or torpedo-shaped or shuttle-shaped object. Maunder stated it appeared to be a definite body. Nothing could well be more unlike the rush of a great meteor or fireball than the steady advance of this torpedo. The British government used the Maralinga site in South Australia as a nuclear testing range during the 1950s. After one test in October of 1957, several servicemen at the base saw a large UFO hovering nearby. It was described as blue and shiny with portholes along the edge and of a clear metallic construction. Although the object stayed for some 15 minutes, no photographs were taken as cameras had been forbidden at the base. Investigation indicated that there was no aircraft activity in the area at the time. In September 1951, a round silver UFO thought to be at approximately 50,000 feet flew over March Air Force Base in California. Two F-86 jets were scrambled and vectored in towards the object by ground control, but the object passed high over the jets and kept circling them. 4 more jets were scrambled, putting 6 in the air altogether, but none of the pilots was able to reach the UFO's altitude. Well, that concludes our episode of Omnibus Unlimited. Tonight's topic was astronautical UAO encounters, unidentified aerial objects. I hope you enjoyed the assortment of stories, including a little blurb there on Men in Black and also Carl Sagan's rebut. But my name is John Horrigan, host of Omnibus Unlimited. Until we see you next time, take care, everybody.